Trump just threatened to put a toll on the Strait of Hormuz. That sentence sounds almost boring. A toll, like a bridge, like something you'd hear about on a local news segment about highway construction. Here's why that sentence is actually one of the most dangerous things said since the ceasefire was signed 2 days ago. This is not about money. This was never about money. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why a toll booth threat is actually a fight over who owns one of the most important pieces of water on the planet. Let's start with what actually happened. On June 19th, the United States and Iran signed a ceasefire agreement after weeks of war. Cameras were there. Officials shook hands. The headlines said the war was over. But if you actually look at what was signed, it is not a peace treaty. It is a 60-day truce, a clock, not an ending. Buried inside that 60-day window is the detail almost nobody explained clearly. Trump said that if a final deal is not reached before the clock runs out, the United States will start charging tolls on ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's response came fast. Iran said it will charge no tolls of its own. Not "we reject this," not "we will block this." Iran said no tolls, like it's already preparing to operate the strait on its own terms the moment this truce expires. Read that again. One side is threatening to charge a toll on a waterway it does not own. The other side is saying it will charge nothing on the same waterway it also does not own. Two governments, neither of which controls this strait under any international law, are already talking about who gets to collect money from ships passing through it. That is two countries quietly staking a claim to the same 8-mile-wide stretch of water before the ink on a ceasefire has even dried. Now here's why this strait matters more than almost any other piece of geography on Earth. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. Tankers from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and Iran all funnel through this one narrow channel to reach the open ocean. There is no easy detour. A handful of pipelines exist that bypass it, but they cannot carry anywhere near the volume the strait handles. Whoever controls passage through Hormuz does not just control shipping fees. They control the valve on the global oil supply. This is the part that connects directly to the war you've been watching for the past several months. We've covered before how the overwhelming majority of Iran's oil exports flow toward China, and how China has spent years building infrastructure specifically to keep that relationship running smoothly outside the American financial system. A toll regime imposed by the United States on a strait Iran depends on for its biggest customer is not a customs fee. It is a lever aimed directly at that relationship. If Washington can tax or restrict transit through Hormuz, it gains a tool to squeeze Iranian oil exports without firing a single shot, all under the cover of a ceasefire. And if Iran is signaling it will run its own toll system the moment the truce lapses, that tells you Tehran is preparing for exactly that scenario. Iran is not treating the 60-day window as a path to peace. Iran is treating it as a buffer to prepare its next move in case Washington tries to choke the strait economically instead of militarily. This is why the timing of the toll threat matters so much. It came within 48 hours of the signing ceremony, not after the deal failed, not after a violation. Immediately, before talks in Switzerland over the nuclear file and over Lebanon had even gotten underway. A government that genuinely believed a lasting peace was close would not open with a threat to tax the most strategically sensitive waterway in the region. You open with a threat like that when you want the other side to know, going into negotiations, exactly what leverage you're prepared to use if they don't move fast enough. Think about what that does to the room in Switzerland. Vance is sitting across from Iranian officials, supposedly discussing de-escalation, nuclear restrictions, a path towards something more permanent than a truce. But hanging over every word of that conversation is a 60-day countdown and a threat that if the clock runs out, the United States starts collecting money on every tanker moving through Hormuz, friend or enemy. That is not the backdrop of a peace negotiation. That is the backdrop of a hostage situation conducted with shipping fees instead of weapons. Here's where this becomes personal for you, even if you've never thought about the Strait of Hormuz in your life. A fifth of the world's oil supply running through a choke point that two governments are both threatening to tax is exactly the kind of uncertainty that sends oil prices climbing before anything actually happens. Markets do not wait for the toll to start. Markets react to the possibility that shipping through Hormuz becomes more expensive, more contested, or less reliable. That shows up at your gas pump within days, not months. The ceasefire was supposed to be the moment prices started coming back down. Instead, the first concrete policy floated after the signing is a threat that could push them right back up. So ask yourself this: if both sides are already talking about who collects tolls on a strait neither of them legally owns, does that sound like a ceasefire that's heading towards something permanent? Or does it sound like both governments fully expect this truce to collapse, and they're already positioning for what comes after it does? Drop your answer in the comments. Permanent or collapsing? And if someone disagrees with you, tell them why, because this is exactly the kind of disagreement that matters more than most of what's being said about this ceasefire on the news right now. We've talked before about how Iran built its entire oil economy around routing crude to China outside the dollar system, and about how Iran turned the strait into a toll booth of its own during the war. This is the next chapter of that same story. The shooting may have paused. The fight over who controls this water has not. 60 days from now, either this becomes a real peace, or the world finds out exactly what a toll war over the Strait of Hormuz actually looks like.